So for those who don't know us, we have a pretty unique story. We started Avi with $10,000 in the bank, and we quickly turned that into $35 million. How does a brand go from 35 million to 50 million to 100 million, 150 million? And that is by raising capital.
When you hit an inflection point in your company and you realize you've brought it as far as you could with what you have and the people you have and the resources you have, that's when you have to have a realization point where, hey, are there other people who can help you do it better? Is there more money that could help it do it better? Are there more strategic ways? And I think for us, the capital raise was something that was always like shown to us as like, oh, kind of stay away from that arena. Don't raise capital if you don't need to. And most of that stigma comes from like VCs and private equity groups.
Right.
I think the way we went about it was a little bit different, which was because we've been building this brand in public, we've always had people who are like, hey, if you guys ever raise any money, I'd love to chip in. I'd love to throw in. And these are mainly your angel investors, right? And for us, it's been our network, right? Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, friends, family. And I think when it came to a point where we're like, okay, we're going to need capital to get to and unlock the next part of this brand, we kind of, I think, sought out and explored what angel raising could look like. And I think that's where it really began for us is choosing to raise capital, right, through a network of angels that are comprised of friends, family, colleagues. I think it was extremely, extremely unique. I think it'd be cool to maybe even before that start to talk about like, what are some of these things we wanted to do with this capital, right? Like, why couldn't we get to 50 million doing what we were doing? Right. Why did it stop at 35?
Yeah. I mean, for us, we're pretty open about this when it comes down to the marketing stuff. We're pretty heavily reliant on paid, there's pros and cons, right? For me, for us, Facebook and TikTok are bread and butter, but there's a certain point where the unit economics don't make sense, right? And you actually have to expand your marketing channels, right? Diversify into influencers, affiliates, TV, YouTube, whatever it is, right? There's so many avenues that you can go down, but you need the capital to kind of not take away from your budget that's already kind of working, but you need additional to test more, right? And then retail is such a big thing for us. Even when we first started, literally month one, we were 50-50 on online and retail. And that retail piece really helped us kick off the journey because it was the avenue that actually brought in the profit, right? Because you're breaking even on D2C, you need that cash, right? So I think those are the big things, at least on my end, for marketing.
Licensing too.
Licensing, yeah. I mean, that's, do you want to maybe cover a little bit why our first licensing deal?
Licensing was definitely like third on our priority list of why we wanted to do a capital raise. But what's really cool about licensing is how you can get such a big kind of macro effect of licensing, right? Sometimes it doesn't directly correlate to more sales, but just more brand impressions, more brand vision. And so for us being in the talks with some of the big names like a Kellogg's or Airheads or Arizona Iced Tea, whatever it may be, everything we're exploring, once you start playing with even the bigger players outside of, Entenmann's is huge, and it's been amazing for us. But now trying to level up our game to get to, again, the next milestone in our brand, we realized that to get into bed with some of the big names, you're going to have to bring big money too.
Right.
But I think licensing, again, outside of, even if you compare it to a marketing channel, it is almost a marketing channel, right? Because you're going to get to leverage that brand or that license now into your marketing tactics or your marketing angles. So it almost is a different channel, but definitely a more cost heavy one.
So with the long list of things that we wanted to do, right? I think we had to figure out the best way to raise capital. And I think you've kind of came up with the best solution for us. So why don't you get into it?
Yeah, it's interesting because when you look at, again, raising capital, you think, okay, I have to go to a venture capital firm, I have to go to a private equity firm, or I just have to go to a bank and try and get a loan, right? It was actually Roger, founders of Novel and previously Smarter. He had told me about how he had raised capital via just like angels. And angels, as in like he was like literally tapping into some of his network or some of the people that were his advisors of the company. And he had mentioned AngelList would be a good route for us. Now, what's really cool about something like AngelList or WeFunder, it gives you the ability to raise capital with your network with a minimum contribution of $100, right? And you get to set all the parameters. So you can set if you want to collect a minimum of $100 or $1,000 or $10,000, right? You can set all those parameters. Right. And it was really cool because when I started digging into this, I also found out, Postpilot had done a raise this way. Right. So Michael, Epstein got to help us along the journey of how to set up and whatnot. What's really cool about the setup and structure is when you go to AngelList, they tell you that no matter how much money you raise, it's a flat fee. Right. Okay, they're gonna take their fee, and the typical fee is $8,000 to $10,000. Okay, so now for if you're raising at $100,000, it seems like a lot. Right. If you're raising $1 million, it's actually not a lot, right? But it's a flat fee. Right. So we went in and set up with AngelList, and what's really cool is we got to set up parameters of what we want the minimum to be, what we want the maximum to be, what our valuation of our company is, and they draft up everything else. Right. So you answer 5 to 6 questions, everything else is set up by AngelList. They give you the portal, they give you even analytics on somebody who opened your link and didn't invest yet, how much time they spent reading your material. So you're equipped to literally become start doing e-commerce for a raise, right? And I think really this episode is like about like how we turned our raise into like almost like an e-commerce effort. Yeah. Right. And I think it'd be cool to like tap into like who did we hit up and why we wanted the people we wanted.
Yeah. Just like you said, we wanted to get, friends and family are cool. Like you have, your family members like, hey, we want to invest. Friends, we want to invest, right? Get them involved, right? Yep. They're part of our journey, right? Right. But I think the biggest piece here was getting people involved in the e-commerce space, retail space, so that not only can we kind of tap into certain people when we need the advice, but when we do that, they have skin in the game. Yeah. Right. So for example, shout out to Elijah from Modify, just like talking to him about how can we do marketing for both D2C and retail. Right. And when I was, talking to him about what we were currently doing, he laughed in my face and said, you guys need to be doing a lot more. Right. Yeah. So being able to kind of tap into these like gurus, across insane. Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram is so helpful. Yeah. Because as founders, we can't have an ego. We don't know it all. So putting that aside, being able to kind of go to somebody and be like, hey, I don't know this. Can you help me? Yeah. And hey, I would love to help you because I want to see you grow because I invested X amount of money. Let me be involved. Right. Right. So I think that was the biggest unique case of doing this is that anybody that we work with, even vendors, right, that they can get involved and they have skin in our game.
Which they did, which is awesome.
Right. So I think that's probably one of the most unique things that we did. Yeah. And it's important to understand who's on your roster is really going to make the difference between you just raising money or actually utilizing it and deploying it in the most efficient manner.
Yeah. And I think it's because once you give people skin in the game, they have a vested interest. I mean, I just remember like, first of all, when we started our raise, I think we wanted to raise $500,000. Yeah. Right. And what this is a really cool effect of this, an effective network, right? Is like when we set out to raise, we went on AngelList, plugged in, all right, we want to raise $500,000. We got our links and we started deploying it to people. And even when we were deploying it to people, it was tactically deploying it to people that like, one, would probably want to have a vested interest in us. And two, that we could also mutually have a stronger relationship by being into something together, right? It's almost like creating your own partner group. And so I think what was really cool though was when we started the process, it was week 1, and I think we raised like $250,000 in week 1, right? And it was like, okay, guys, we're halfway there. We're probably gonna hit it in like a few weeks, no problem, right? And I think we raised another like $250,000 in like the next 4 days. And we were like, okay, we've hit like we hit the goal. But I think what really came to all of us, me, you, Ankit, were people who invested in us were like, hey, I have somebody that I think could be valuable to come in on this round if you have any more space.
Yeah.
What's really cool about AngelList is you can up your limit.
There's no limit.
There's no
whatsoever.
limit. And there is, you even if you set it at some starting point, you can adjust it at any time.
Yeah.
You can also adjust the cutoff date. You can adjust everything, right? It's really, really cool. But what's really cool for us was people coming to us and saying, hey, I think this person can also bring value.
Right.
So now we almost had a referral network of people who we thought would bring value, brought additional value from other people,
Right.
which was really cool to see, I think, across Twitter, LinkedIn, everywhere.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, how many times somebody said, oh, can I pass this on to somebody else? Can I pass this on to, like, absolutely, you know, and it opened so many doors for us, like getting those people who have invested in companies before, knowing what to do or what the next steps are.
And the advice becomes so much more tactical because, again, these people who are investing in you, they are putting their own money. So the advice they're going to give you, it's not general advice. It's sound advice to say, hey, I think you should do this, right? Mm-hmm. And I think what's really cool when you also choose your network to invest with is like these people realize that you have a day job and that your day job is not to answer to investors.
Right.
And so instead, it's always been like, even like Rahul Izar, right? Who invested in us, like always like gives little tidbits. He's like, hey, I know you must be busy, but here's something you guys should look at, right? Or here's something to check out. And it's like, it's cool to see these people kind of want to go above and beyond. And then the biggest thing, I think the biggest umbrella on this topic is like, you now have pretty much a group of people that till the end of whatever the journey is for your company, that is probably going to root you on.
Yeah.
Right. And that in itself, I feel like it's like having brand affiliates or brand ambassadors in the network of raising capital, which I don't know if it's been done too many times. You know, I think it's pretty cool that we're doing it.
Right.
Chew on This is sponsored by Parker, the only card made for D2C brands to help your business achieve net 60 without a fee. Head over to getparker.com and mention Chew on This, and they'll offer you a $3,000 signing bonus when you spend your first $50,000 of ad spend within 30 days of signing up. So 8 weeks later, after deciding to raise capital, we raised 2.2 million, of which literally 1.5 million of that came from referrals, right? And our lovely Twitter and LinkedIn platforms. Now, getting the capital was super easy, right? It takes 1 day for AngelList to deliver the money after closing documents are sent to everyone. And we did it via an SPV, so a special purpose vehicle that is done through a safe document. So basically, you're selling future equity based on an agreement of, hey, whenever the valuation comes alive, we're going to give you future equity. Okay. So we got this capital. And one of the first things I think we wanted to touch on is, can we tap in and help your department in any way? Because you've been riding solo, you've been doing so many things on your own as much as you could. So like, how can we help with efficiencies, right?
Yeah. So
if you want to touch on where you dived in.
Yeah. And I've always been a Facebook and TikTok and Google guy. But it's very apparent that we need to diversify further, right? Especially after iOS updates and things like that. It's not easy anymore, right? Especially at scale, right? So if our goal is to hit 50 million, 100 million, it's going to be very difficult to do that just on paid, right? So the first couple of things that we really wanted to do was really dive into influencer marketing, right? That in itself is an investment because one, it's time, it's seeding, products, it's, coming up with these contracts with some of these bigger influencers that do want upfront payment. So there's a lot of things that went into doing this that you need that a little bit extra capital to start testing, right? Correct. You don't want to take away from what's working, right? It's adding on to it, right? So influencer marketing was huge. Started, sourcing whether they were, big influencers on the platform, talking to a few celebrities. So that in itself just, it requires some capital to get things out there. On top of that, affiliate marketing, we really wanted to get into. Again, you don't want to take away from anything else, but just, starting to apply additional budget elsewhere. That way you can start to see that incremental lift versus spreading yourself a little bit too thin, right? So if our marketing budget on Facebook and Google and TikTok is probably 600 a month, how can I now get to 750, 800, a million in spend without having to rely on increasing paid, but by increasing marketing channels elsewhere, right? So I think that was probably the first two that we really wanted to dive into. And then probably Q1, I really want to start doing commercials, TV. So we'll
bringing TV and direct mail back, huh?
Direct mail, connected TV commercials. I mean, I think those three are huge now.
Yeah.
Shout out to Post Pilot. Being able to kind of set up these campaigns now, especially for retention, has been huge.
Yeah.
But I think even diving into that discovery is going to be even bigger.
It's huge.
So
it's huge.
I think that'll be the roadmap for next year, is to increase outside of what you're currently doing. And thanks for the money. Do that.
Thank you guys. And I think just to touch on that point, I think the biggest piece is like, I think you've always said it, is like, when you're looking at even Facebook or Triple Whale dashboard, you're like, we need to increase top line traffic.
Yeah.
But we can't keep spending what we're spending to do it. And I think, how do you increase traffic, right? It's like, even the success you've had with Afterpay ads and stuff like that. It's just like, you're always looking at traffic. And of course you need quality, right? Which is why you pick the right sources.
Right.
But it's traffic. It's a traffic game.
Discoverability for the brand, right? I mean, Facebook, TikTok, we've talked about this. Like, it's all very like circling the same people, right? Facebook doesn't have that data anymore, so it's always going to be like, I feel like retargeting is just happening always.
Right.
On TikTok, Facebook, whatever it is, how can you start introducing your brand to new people? And that's honestly influencers, affiliates, connected TV commercials, direct mail. The list goes on.
No, couldn't agree more.
So outside of just D2C, probably one of the biggest reasons we raised was for retail. So talk a little bit about that and the plans there.
Yeah, I think the one challenge we've always had is, and we'd always have this discussion, it's like, when we hit a certain milestone, like let's say we hit $1 million a month or 1.5 million a month, I feel like whenever we have our end of month meetings, everyone's looking at you and like, okay, so Ash, how are we gonna hit 2 million? And you're just like, guys, can I get some help here? Like, and you look at, I don't know how many of your guys' P&L or even balance sheet structure, how much of it is split up versus D2C versus B2B, right? And for us, the D2C portion, always healthy, always rocking, always growing. And then you have this little kind of piece that's floating around. It's B2B, which is your wholesale, your retail, distribution, etc. Everything outside of e-commerce, right? And we've always done, I think, just enough there, like where you're like, yeah, we do retail. And then it's like, the statement stops there. Right. And then everyone's like, so where are you in? We're like, Amazon. and it just stops there. So I think for us, the build out of retail is what's going to become the assisted revenue to D2C, because to think that your brand, and again, the unicorns that have done it, great work, but majority of the brands that get to the 9-figure mark or tracking towards the 9-figure mark, they have a good portion of retail. So for us, our goal was that we're going to get retail up to at least 30 to 40% of revenue. And the only way we can do that, and which is right now, by the way, it's 8 to 10%, right? So for us to triple or quadruple retail, the only place you can start is to spend money. So spending money for us was, okay, we're going to have to get XYZ amount of brokers. We're going to have to maybe build a little bit of a team out. So we have a traveling salesperson now. We're going to have to build more relationships, which means we're going to have to spend money on dinners. We're going to have to spend money on flights, hotels, etc. And we're going to have to send out a lot of packages, tons and tons of packages, to the point where we have a storage room just to send out retail packages. Display signs. We have to have trade spend. There is just everything you look at to build retail is a cost. Yeah. It's not like, oh yeah, you can do this and organically it'll just come, right? I think when it comes to it, what we had to do here was knowing that everything's a cost and knowing that it's such a high goal of tripling that business, we had to raise some capital and say, this is how much money we're almost willing to kind of say is the kind of example of we're going to have to see if it works.
Right.
And that's what retail is you're going to have to throw it out there and see if it works. Is if you want a reason to not do retail, there's a billion and one, right? And you can encounter all of them. But I think for us, it was to explore some of these things. We had to do it. So even for us, the strategy we're going with, right, of like going to specialty, which is Vitamin Shop and GNC, then hoping to win that, and then going to grocery, right, to hit like your Albertsons and getting into KeHE. Then from there going into food, drug, mass, of going into Walmart, Target, your Sam's Club, your Costco. That's kind of like the roll up strategy. Each layer requires sometimes millions of dollars, more.
Yeah.
So I think what capital opens up, it's not that we're going to go and blow the money.
No.
It gives us the ability to, when an opportunity presents itself now, we can actually explore it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember December 2020, Target hit us up.
Yep.
They did a line review on our 3 SKUs, and it was going to cost us, I believe it was $50,000 per SKU, or maybe it was $50,000 total. I forget. We were still so young.
Yeah.
Right. So one was we were just not there yet. But had we been there, the only reason not to have done it was we wouldn't have enough capital on our hand.
Right.
Now, if the same opportunity came about, at least the reason to say no won't be capital. Right. So I think that is what it powers in retail for us. And then I think the last piece is supply chain, right? Which you can probably, I think, even comment on, even just like how we're able to utilize supply chain to where it's like you're getting much more ammo on the marketing now again, right? Which is, circa back to 2021, where it's like, all right, low MOQ, let's drive this home, let's get this going. And then on the other side of manufacturing, we're just able to order more, get better pricing, right? So your marketing, your capital efficiencies on your P&L is better. So I think those pieces have been really, really helpful. But I think overall, if you layer it back, it's to assist D2C revenue to not be this floating island. And I shout out to the CMOs that are just taking the pain like every month over month. Like, where's the revenue? Where's the profit?
Yeah. I think the last part of raising the capital was to expand the team a little bit, right? We've literally, I think, have hovered around 9 employees for the last 3 years. Saw, growth to 35 million, and we realized we can't do it alone anymore, right? There's that saying that says the team that you have around you that got you to 30 million is not the same team that will bring you to 100 million.
Right.
And we love our employees. Right. I think we just need to be a little bit more strategic with hires for certain things that we may not know. Right. So like getting into retail, having, like you said, a team on the ground, but having somebody to manage that team. Right. Having somebody that does have a good Rolodex that can help with introductions and connections and stuff like that. Right.
Yep.
And then just even on the D2C end, right. As a CMO, I just recently stopped running our own ads. Right. And now have started to build the team in-house. Trying to bring, email in-house, SMS in-house, retention in-house. Like that in itself is going to require a few roles, right? And very critical, like people need to be in those positions because one, like I said, I don't know everything.
Right.
I know the direction we want to go in, but I need people that are more knowledgeable on the subject than I am or you. And they need to take it and run with it. So those people can be costly. And
especially in today's market. Especially in today's
100%,
market.
right? So I think that's another great use of funds is growing out the team so that you can take certain elements of your business to the next level.
I agree. Yeah. And I think the biggest piece, and even the team, is like we've always done it ourselves. Like you said, like just handling it. And what that takes away is like sometimes you just need a fresh mind to look at it, right? And it's like, that's what we say sometimes, like, hey, let's send it to this person too, who may just show us something that's like, It may not be right or wrong, but it's different. It's so unique and different in approach or perspective. So I think building out the team will also just give us more minds to infiltrate and work with. So excited for that piece too.
So chew on this, right? 2 takeaways every episode. I got one. You got one?
I got one.
All right. So my first one would be pretty plain and simple. Sit down with your founders, co-founders, and map out where you see yourself every year for the next 5 years, right? What are the revenue goals? What are the profit goals for your brand? And understand and try to estimate, do you need additional capital, right? Maybe even sit down with your finance team, understand how much capital is going to be needed to hit the certain thresholds or goals that you need to do, and assess if you need to raise money.
Second chew on this from today's episode is if you're planning to use capital, especially after you do the full evaluation of your business for the next 5 years, like Ash mentioned, and capital raise is something that is imminent and something that will be needed. I'd like for you guys to explore AngelList, maybe even a WeFunder, and creating an SPV or an RUV to raise your capital using your network, your friends, your family, and taking the dive into it. It's a low-cost approach to seeing if you can get the capital that you need, your business needs, without having to become at the mercy of a VC or a PE. Nothing wrong with them. Love them. We're probably going to be raising capital from them, maybe in a later round if we ever need it. But there's this baby stage between startup to when you really need to get the big money. And I think that void can be filled. Instead of getting buried in debt, you can raise capital in a way where you get more people interested, get the people around you involved, and it builds your confidence too. I think for us, the minute we raised the capital we did, I think it was a whole new life into the company too. So explore creative options to raising capital.
So plan it out and execute.
There we go.
Chew on that.
Chew on that.